have a system and a routine for it, and a daily routine that even if it's, hey, for 1 minute, I'm going to look at my strategy, I'm going to rethink about my strategy. If it's important, build it into your routine, and then you can just be free to do what comes, because stuff will come in the day that if your focus was going to be routine, you get distracted, you get off focus, you get something comes in. And if that's a once a month or once in a business time, situation, you're going to be lost. You've got to have it in there.
Yeah, well, and I just think all of this is so incredibly important to the whole idea of discovering content, because it's never too late to take that step back. As you both have said, it's never too late to take a look at what are you sharing? What are you putting out there in the world? What is the purpose behind your use of Twitter? And I do talk a lot about that. Unfortunately, we all probably got into Twitter and many other social networks with no idea what we were looking to do with that, especially those of us that were early adopters. It was just like, woohoo, what is this?
Just fun. We didn't know what to do with it back then. We just thought it was fun, right? Everybody followed everybody back in those days. It was... Yeah.
Absolutely. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to, we also as a team have talked a lot about this week, which is don't be afraid to slow down initially right now to speed up down the road. Don't be afraid to take a step back and just reassess, reanalyze, figure out why the heck am I using Twitter? How is it supporting my business? Is Twitter pushing me closer to my goals every single day? Or is it just a whole lot of busy work? Is it something that I've piled on top and on top and on top of everything else I've got to do in my day? And it's good to give yourself that breather to really figure that out.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what you just said, Rebecca, just the title of this blab about discovering engaging content to post on Twitter, it just goes back to those social media metrics too, right? Are they supporting your business goals? Are those metrics giving you the kind of information that will allow you to take action? We talk a lot about the difference between vanity metrics and actionable metrics, and I know that's a topic for a whole other blab, but engagement is really where it's at, because it gives you information that you can take action on, that will directly support what your goals are. I mean, sure, likes are great, retweets are great. Having a great reach is wonderful. It shows that you've got momentum and you're building a larger audience. But is that really giving you information that you can use to further your goals? That's where engagement comes in. And it may be the most difficult metric to achieve. I know that. But once you get that going, oh my gosh, the information that you can take from that is truly priceless.
Yeah, and again, we're, I just looked at the clock. We're about 15 minutes over the top of the hour here. So we'll kind of wrap up here. But I would love to hear, Jody, maybe we can start with you. What does you said you do your daily kind of planning, curation, whatever it is in the morning. What does that look like for you?
So I wake up at 5 and pull open my Air and
pull open your what?
My MacBook Air. Okay.
Air. Yeah. And then she initially wakes up, she's not breathing. Then she must open the Air.
Yeah, that too. I go to Hootsuite first. So I go to Hootsuite first, and for me, that means looking at Twitter, looking at my mentions, and I'm really focused on my industry. So financial aid, I kind of concentrate on what broke news last night, what broke news this morning on the East Coast, if anything broke, so that I'm really up to date in my niche. And then after I spend some time reading everything that I need to keep me the most up to date in my offline business, shall we say, then I probably go to Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, in that order. And then I circle back through emails, not till probably 10 o'clock in the morning. So and then it rinse, repeat.
Habit. Like Ross was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, how about you, Ross? Where does it fit in for you?
I batch stuff. So every day I'm fine tune these accounts and the ones that I have for my clients, and then for the clients that I work for and their clients and stuff. Content wise, I say I start by looking at. I'm always researching quality sources, because for me, I feel like there's so much less work you have to do in the long run if you have really awesome sources, not where you have to go filter. I'll filter out even in like Triber. I'll mute people, I'm sorry, but it's like, if I don't want to share your content, I'm not going to share your content. If you want to share mine, you can, you don't have to. At the end of the day, it's quality. I need that quality, because that's the trust that we have with the content that says, you are a quality source, just to throw out there, drop the gauntlet there. For example, like, I will share your content when I want a piece of visual content that I know is on point. Boom, I can go to your feed and I'll share that on any of my accounts, because I have that trust and I know what it is, and I know it's going to be good, and I know it's going to look good, and I know my audience is going to find value in that. And so for me, I just go to my sources and I'll schedule on the back end. I'm never really scheduling for today, because I like to be well ahead. That's how I get ahead and do so many things. Is I'm putting on for a week from now, 2 weeks from now. I'm fine tuning that and making sure it's strategic, and then circling around and looking at new tools. So like, if you want to do something that's really relevant, if you've already done your baseline work and you've scheduled your good stuff, and it's going to be visual and it's going to be great and it's going to be from the right people and all these sources, then you can go back and say, okay, if there's something really hopping that's there today and I see something trending or whatever, I'll hop over and be like, okay, cool, I can jump into that conversation and see where that content's going. So for me, that's, it's a daily routine, but it's really not for today. You've got to get it. If you need whatever you need today, if you need 5 pieces of content today, do 7 or do 10. Be set for tomorrow. So tomorrow you're looking on the next day. It really snowballs and enables you to have an incredible presence that doesn't require you. If one day something comes up, hey, my content, my feeds, my audiences don't know that anything changed.
That's great advice. How about you, Diana? I know your secret, but you can share it.
I roll over in bed in the morning while my eyes aren't quite open, and I get my phone, and that's how I wake up, is on Twitter and checking all the social, check Instagram, check them all. And I do it before I'm even completely awake. And I actually read something recently that said that it used to be when people would wake up, the first thing they do is get a cup of coffee. But now the first thing they do is check their social network, right? Yeah, it's like I do that before I'm even awake. And then my secret weapon is Post Planner, right? And it helps me all of my posting and the content and everything. I love that
Your
tool.
sound has gone crazy.
Oh no, it did?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, well, I'll be quiet.
I knew she was a sin.
There, you're better.
Okay, well, anyway, that's all. My key is just check it all the time on your phone. That's what I do.
Okay. But that's not true, though. Your real secret is that you really prep your week. And Sunday is your big day.
Yes, I do. I schedule my content on Sunday for the week, because I do not have time to be thinking about that during the week when I'm busy doing other stuff. And if you really want to stay consistent about it, to me, that's the way to go. Sunday night, just take an hour, maybe. Yeah, I take an hour, sometimes 2 hours if I really, depending on how much I'm scheduling, and just sit down and do it. And when I see content during the week, I'll favorite those tweets, because I'll think, oh, I want to schedule this. Or, if it's something that's time sensitive, I'll get it out right away. If it's evergreen content, I'll put it in my queue for the next week. And just, but I think putting aside a chunk of time to schedule your tweets for the week is, for me, absolutely critical.
Key. Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, and having a capture location that just makes it really easy to go to all day long, especially because, Jody, you definitely are interactive in it, listening all the time. I mean, Ross, Diana, you all are. And I think the only way you can do that is to really get a jump start on your week, know where you're headed, know what that content is going to look like, what's going out, when it's going out, so that you can be responsive and there in real time.
And if you don't see it, you can't get a good idea on your strategy either. I mean, people underestimate that. Like, when you can actually visually see, wow, I'm totally doing a ton of like Facebook posts on this day and then nothing all that. Like, oh, let me you know, people don't sometimes think about the spacing of it. Like when you can actually see what you're about to put out, then you can go, oh, well, this is kind of clumped together. Let's move that post here so that I kind of get a nice visual post.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe this is about SEO. Maybe this is about social. Maybe this is about that. And really keep it lively and fresh so that it's not like just weirdly set up.
And for me, just really quick, and I know you guys have to go, like for me, my schedule is really a year-long schedule because there are times where I'm super busy offline in my office with submitting client applications. So for having a year-long calendar, I wish I could do every Sunday night, but Sunday nights, you know, I sometimes have a client or depending on what time of year it is. So I have to switch it to another time. So I have what we call the Holy Grail that is just tells me what time frames I have and when I need to go schedule my content.
Yeah.
And sometimes it switches because my clients are key and I want to make life easy for them. And so I can kind of double back in a different way.
Yeah. Well, and just to wrap it up, you know, Lori Reed just made a great point in the comments, which is, it can be very overwhelming,
Yes,
which is exactly why we're talking about this, especially for a small business, as we were talking about earlier. You know, everybody's juggling so much. And you have to figure out what can you manage and how are you working to your highest impact every single day. And if it doesn't fit in, if you can't make it fit in, give it away. I am a firm believer in surrounding yourself with people that are way smarter than me in a million different areas. And that is the entire team at Post Planner. I am so fortunate that I am never the smartest person in the room. And so you just,
nice to have a team.
Yes.
Know where you can let go and know where you need your help. And I think that helps with your small business.
Yeah, most definitely. So if there's one person, you know, maybe it's just that virtual assistant that you add into the mix that frees up a couple hours, 3 hours, 4 hours here and there that is going to make a dramatic impact in your focus within your business, then, I would pull the trigger on that all day long.
100%. All right, you guys, I need to jump.
We are going to run.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you
See
for
you
being
later.
here.
Bye, Jody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. I just loved having you here with your insight as always. And thank you to everybody that was here. We definitely talked about discovering content, but as always, and with every blab, it kind of evolved into there are so many moving pieces within that you really have to consider. Oop, we lost Ross. So there he goes.
So thank you, Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, as always, Diana. I mean, you have built up such a thriving community on Twitter, across social media, period. But you just do such an amazing job and always bring a wealth of information. So it is my pleasure to get to hop on Blab with you. And like I said, thanks to everybody for being here as we talked about discovering content that'll rock your Twitter feed. We are going to be back in 2 weeks. We talked a lot about consistency. We are consistently going to be here on Blab. So next one will be November 4th. And make sure you follow Post Planner right here on Blab on Twitter. And you will get all of the up-to-date information on every single blab that we've got coming up. But again, just a big thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Jody. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you for all the love, too. Look at all our little high fives.
I know.
Yay,
I'm going to give you a few before we go.
There we go. Too. Let me give you some, too. Yay.
All right, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. See you again. All right, we are ready to go. A few little minor technical difficulties, but here we are. And I am Rebecca Radice with Post Planner. And this is the always lovely Diana Adams with me.
Thank you.
You have your hat on.
Yes.
I
had to, with the Star Wars trailer out and all the excitement, it just seemed appropriate.
Well, that's exactly how people know you. So it's good. It's good every once in a while to see you as your avatar, right?
Yes, thank you. Looks like we matched today, too.
We didn't even try. Didn't even attempt it.
That's right.
So, hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. We are going to talk about how to discover content that is going to rock your Twitter newsfeed. And we have a lot of tips for you, but as always, this is Blab. So want it to be totally interactive, get people in here, get people talking with us, sharing your top tips on how you're creating content, how you're curating content, how you're finding content, and then sharing that content with your audience in a way that just naturally attracts people to not only your Twitter feed, obviously, but to your business, to all of that other great content that you're out there creating. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too, how to leverage a lot of the content that you're already creating, because as we know, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to build an engaged audience. It takes a lot to really gain that traction and that momentum, Diana. We talk a lot about that, where it's a real challenge for businesses today to find the time not only to discover that great content, but to find the time to come in and create that conversation, really get people interactive.
Exactly. It does take a while. And sometimes people will look at you and I, for example, and they'll say, wow, I want to be like that. But they don't realize that we've spent how many years tweeting every single day and on social media every day. It really is a commitment over the long haul to reach those goals.
Absolutely. Well, so let's go ahead and let's dive right in, because I know we were a couple minutes late getting started. And let's start with tip number one. How about hashtags? Hashtags are such a hot topic when it comes to all social networks, but especially Twitter, and really understanding how do you use them to find that content, to find content that people are talking about, that they're sharing, that is very relevant to your industry. And we'll get into some tools in a little bit. First, I just want to talk more about, from a high level, where do you start when you're considering hashtags and you're thinking, okay, yeah, I know hashtags are great because they're going to help people find me, but then how do I use them to really get a better feel for what the hashtags are that people are using that's relevant to my community, how I can do a much deeper dive into the type of content that my community wants to see, and then how can I better start to identify those people that are sharing great content that I might want to curate and share with my community. So I'll let you go first, Diana. I'll let you jump in, and then
sure.
We can go from there.
Sure. Hashtags are critical, and I can tell you this from personal experience because I was actually, from a mistake on Twitter's part, just a glitch, kicked out of Twitter search for about 1.5 years or 2 years. And when I finally got back in and started being visible with those hashtags again, wow, what a difference it made. So if you, I recommend putting hashtags in all of your tweets. I was on a viral chat a few weeks ago with Ann Smarty, and she said she doesn't use them on Facebook. So every network, so the thing here to keep in mind is that every social network is different. As far as Twitter goes, if you are unfamiliar with hashtags, you can go to search.twitter.com and put in a hashtag. Put in any hashtag you want and look at all of the tweets. And I think of hashtags a little bit like I think of SEO keywords. You know, if you're going to hashtag something for, say, for Christmas, for example, instead of putting Christmas, you might want to put Christmas Day, or you might want to put Christmas 2015 and really narrow it down. Now, there's a lot of hashtags that aren't searched, right? So you won't see a big impact from them. But just with a little bit of research, you'll see which ones are super popular. Infographic, the hashtag infographic is one of the most popular ones searched on Twitter. I absolutely recommend putting that in any infographic tweets that you send. But it's not only using hashtag to your advantage in that way, we're talking about discovering content. That is a great way to find content in your niche. You know, keep up with the relevant hashtags in your industry. And boy, there's such great information out there.
Well, and there's so many different ways you can use those hashtags too. You know, you talked a little bit about finding out what those conversations are that's going on within your industry, which of course is going to start to bring up, you're going to start to see some people over and over again and see, oh, hey, these people are sharing some really great content.
Exactly.
That, I might want to get out there and start a conversation, start to really build a relationship, start to share their content, which you always hope turns into the whole idea of reciprocity. Somebody else being able to share your content out as well. But to your point, there's a lot of different ways to leverage hashtags. So it could be trending hashtags, maybe event hashtags.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
We're coming up into the big holiday time of the year. Holiday hashtags can be really, really popular. So think about what are those conversations that are relevant to you, are relevant to your community, and then what hashtags might they be using? What would they be using in their conversations? And do your research, as Diana said, to really understand how popular those hashtags are. But also to better understand what is it that they're looking for? What is that content that's actually getting shared, and that you can start to either create content around those topics or curate that topic around as far as those hashtags. And hashtags, as you said, just a great way to, I think, really insert yourself into that conversation, but also to cast a wider net. So really get your content out in front of a larger audience. So as you are discovering that great content, continue to use those hashtags so that you're contributing back into that community, back into that pool of content. And so as other people are starting to do the same thing you are, using those hashtags to discover great content, well, there you are. Now all of a sudden you're showing up.
I remember last year during the Super Bowl, during one of the touchdowns, and it was such an exciting moment. I thought, oh, I'm going to be the first one to tweet this. I grabbed my phone as fast as I could, and my hands were shaking, and I tweeted my tweet and stuck my hashtag in there, and I got like 250 retweets on that tweet because I showed up at the top of that Super Bowl list for that touchdown. So it's a lot of fun. You can make it a game, see, not only use hashtags to discover content, but to grow your following as well. It's a fun. I love hashtags. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a little confusion over how to use hashtags, how many hashtags you should use.
Exactly.
And obviously with every platform, it's very different, very unique. My suggestion is always to stick to the most relevant hashtags.
Exactly.
Make sure that you're not spamming your own feed, so every other word isn't a hashtag, but stick with the ones that make the most sense to the actual content or context of that tweet. And make sure that they're going to make the most sense to the audience you're trying to reach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You just think of it a little bit like you might think of SEO, right? You want to be super relevant. You want to reach that targeted audience. Think of it very specifically like that. And a lot of people have fun with hashtags and they joke around with it and put funny ones in there. But if you're really trying to leverage those, you really have to think in specifics, like you said, relevance.
Yeah. Well, and it can be. Yeah. Obviously we use hashtags like we use emojis now.
Exactly.
To kind of give away the feeling of the moment. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So much of, I was going to say Twitter, but of course it's just social media across the board, is helping us do as businesses, as individuals, as personal brands, is to share that personal side of who we are, as well as the business side. So don't be afraid to have fun with it. Don't be afraid to jump in and talk about your love of football. And Star Wars, obviously, because those are the connectors within social media. Those are the little tiny tidbits, the little pieces of us that connect people to us. And I think that's another mistake I see people make with content, but definitely with hashtags, is you get so stuck in your ways that you forget that, we're here to actually be social and have fun and interact on that level as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hashtags. So much to it. It could be a whole conversation in and of itself. But I think we've definitely gotten to the bottom of the fact that there are multiple different ways you can use hashtags. Discovering content is an excellent one. And really think about what are those top hashtags that people are using, whether it's an event that's happening around your industry, whether it's a conference that you're attending. Whoop, looks like we might have lost Diana there for a second. Maybe it's industry related hashtags. I would recommend that you start to figure out what those top hashtags are that are most relevant, going to be the most interesting to your audience, and ones that you can use with consistency based on the type of content that you're putting out there. So, for instance, it could be social media related. It could be leadership related. Maybe it's quote related. Whatever type of content you're putting out there, you're doing that same research and hashtags that you are across, say, Instagram. Obviously, our use of hashtags not quite as much over on Facebook, never took off in the sense that hashtags have on other social networks, but also doing your homework and your research just like you would with anything else. So unfortunately, I think I was trying to see if we could get Diana back here, but she might be having some problems with her internet. I know we were having some challenges earlier. So I'm going to move on to the next topic, but I'm going to open up seats. We've got obviously open seats so we can keep this conversation going around Twitter. Twitter lists was the next topic that we were going to jump into, and how to use Twitter lists to identify, discover that great content. And I think Twitter lists are one of the most underutilized tools within Twitter. And if you're not familiar, lists are just a great way for you to start to categorize, kind of put different topics or people into buckets, where you can quickly and easily come in and gain access to that information. So, for example, you could create a list around your top social media favorite people that are out there tweeting just phenomenal content every single day. So Brian Fanzo, we all know Brian. I'll use him as an example. I might add Brian. I might add you, Diana, to that list. So every single day as I come into Twitter and I'm looking for great content to share, I'm going to jump into that list. All I have to do is click on that list. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, everything that you and Brian and everybody else that I've added to that list has shared, there it is right there within my stream. So I'm not bouncing all over the place, not banging from one person to the next or trying to remember, who shared that great post yesterday. I have it all there, right there in front of me. And I love lists. Lists were one of the first places I started when I jumped on Twitter, because I quickly recognized the power of being far more productive in how I was using Twitter and how I was interacting with people, and then in how I was able to stay on top of all of that great content that people were sharing, instead of, like I said, spending maybe hours out of your day trying to find that content. Boom, there it is right there within those lists. And Diana, you've been on Twitter since 2008 or 9?
I think it was March 2nd, 2009. I remember the day.
Oh, that's right. I think were we the exact same day?
I think we've talked about this before. That's crazy. Oh, and you know who else joined that same month is our lovely Erin Lee.
Oh, no kidding. We all joined the same exact time. How
Isn't that wild? Yep. I used Twitter lists as my content curation tool for the first 2 years on Twitter. That's what I used, and it was phenomenal.
That exact question. Yeah, exactly. How you've been using it. So, do you see that your use of Twitter lists has evolved since you started?
Absolutely, it has evolved, and I don't use it as much as a content as a way to curate content as much anymore because, I use Post Planner, which allows you to have it all in one tool. It just makes it easier. It's more streamlined. But I still use my Twitter lists a lot. I have a Rockstar list that has about 400 of my favorite Twitter friends on it, and I try not to miss those tweets. And I love Twitter lists. And like we've said before, once you start following a lot of people, I think it pretty much becomes essential for a productive Twitter experience.
Well, and it just simplifies
Exactly.
everything that you're trying to accomplish, everything that you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just with, as we talked about with hashtags and the relevancy, think about your lists in terms of who is sharing a similar content, and then how can you categorize them in a way that makes it very easy for you to come in and find that content. So it might be, leadership, it might be motivational, it might be these people share amazing tips on visual marketing or visual content or inbound marketing or whatever your focus is. It's really determining how you can best structure those out.
You can make a list for anything.
Yes,
anything,
absolutely.
any kind of, like you said, it's a bucket. So any kind of group within the group.
Well, and another great point, as we're talking about the two different sides of discovering great content, both with hashtags and now with lists, is that once you start using those hashtags, once you create lists, if they're public, other people can tap into that as well. So they can subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now all of a sudden it's kind of that pay it forward situation where you have all these rock stars, 400 people on your list, and you're like, hey guys, I've done all the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly.
I've already added all these people to this list. So all I have to do is subscribe to your list instead of starting from scratch and creating a whole new list.
And by the way, if somebody subscribes to my Rockstar list, they are getting so much good information because I've been collecting my favorite, Twitter content curators on there for years. It is a phenomenal list, by the way, if anybody wants to follow it. It's just amazing. I love it.
Well, 400 people, that is probably one of the biggest lists I've heard of. I'm going to subscribe to that as soon as we're done because that
they're all rock stars.
Awesome.
Oh, and you're on it too, of course, Rebecca.
And you know what? I'm just gonna stop us real quick and a couple of housekeeping. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues. We had to hop over from the original blab we had created and start a new one. So please, please, please help us spread the word. Click on that Tell a Little Bird and tweet out the information on this blab. Let your community know that we are over here talking about Twitter and talking about how you can improve your engagement by discovering amazing content. And if we've got some people that want to hop in here and get into the conversation, Diana, you and I we can keep on pushing forward with all of our tips, but I'd love to hear from our audience. We have so many amazing people. I've seen a lot of the conversation. Josh is here. I know Josh has a lot to share around this. Scott might want to, but just lots of people that I know would have some great insight to share as well. Beyond Twitter lists, how about repurposing content, Diana? How about taking what you already have and figuring out new? Yes. We are definitely big on this at Post Planner. Is how do you take one piece of content and multiply that into many pieces of content? And I think that's another area where I see a common misconception is, for example, somebody will, you're a blogger, you create a piece of content, you've written a new post, and you're like, woohoo, push publish, rock on, I am done, I have tweeted that, check the box, instead of realizing there's so much more you can do, not only from a promotional point of view, but from a content repurposing point of view. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Maybe some ideas on how to repurpose that content so you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel all the time.
Exactly. Well, Rebecca, you are the queen of repurposing content, and I have learned so much from you about that. But if you say, for example, you write a blog post with, 10 tips to leverage Twitter lists, since we were just talking about, let's use that as an example. And say it got a lot of engagement on your blog. It was very popular amongst your followers and fans. There's a piece of content that you can repurpose. Well, first of all, I would recommend reposting that content before you even repurpose it. A lot of people I know will spend hours creating a blog post and then they post it one time and then that's it. And it's like, wait a minute, you spent hours writing it. How about post it more than that? Set it up into re-queue, send it out more. But anyway, so now you're reposting it. Another thing that you can do is repurpose it. So say you've got that post, 10 ways to leverage Twitter lists. Why not take that post and use that as a guide and do a blab on the same topic? Or maybe take that post and turn it into a 10 bullet point infographic. Now Canva has a tool right within there where you can make your own infographics. Or maybe you'll take that post and turn it into do a video, post it on YouTube. There's so many ways to repurpose content. Another thing you can do is pull the quotes out of there and make some quote graphics. Graphics are so popular on social media, and if you leverage those, you can show up, on any Twitter search, the images show up before the tweets. So get yourself some of that real estate, create your quote graphics. There are, I think, I saw a list Rebecca put together a week or two ago with over 30 ways that you can repurpose one piece of successful content. Absolutely do that. Such a great way to just keep your existing engaging content going and going and going. Just give it a longer life cycle.
Yeah, exactly. A longer shelf life. Well, and Jeremy Murphy makes a great point. Just like you can take a blog post and turn it into a blab, you can do the opposite. You could take a blab like this. Yeah. And turn that into a blog post, upload content into YouTube. Exactly. Yes, and then get that content over there, because we know that everybody consumes content different. We know that just because we enjoy visual marketing, we enjoy blabs, doesn't mean that somebody that maybe that spends a lot of their time in the car commuting has the opportunity to do that. So maybe it's a podcast that you turn it into. Yes. So you can capture that audience. But it does really come down to understanding who your audience is, how they consume content, and then making sure you are serving up exactly what they're looking for over and over and over again. Yes. So that you are, you're getting the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak, out of your content. Exactly. And you can even get super fancy with it too. If you want to, you could take that 10 bullet point list of ways to leverage Twitter, what did I just say? Twitter lists, and you could turn it into an ebook. I mean, you could get really fancy with it and just keep it going and going and going. And you already know your audience loves it. They are craving that information. It just makes sense. And repurposing is just, is such a concept. I love it. We use that all the time at Post Planner. Well, and I think repurposing can be fairly overwhelming too when you first get started. So I would encourage people, if you haven't done a lot of repurposing yet, pick one thing. Pick one thing that you can easily do, or that possibly, you have a graphic designer, you have somebody, maybe your virtual assistant that can assist with that. But pick one thing that you could take maybe 3 to 5 different posts and repurpose into. When I first got started, graphics were really big. Infographics hadn't really taken off yet. So I was repurposing into just little tip quotes, like quote graphics, where you could take your blog post and pull out 10 different tips. Maybe you gave advice around how to use Twitter lists. And so just pull out short little tips and stick those on a branded graphic, something that is aligned with your company look and feel, and then expand from there, then maybe into an infographic. One of my favorite ways is PowerPoint. With, LinkedIn and SlideShare now integrated, and just the powerful way of being able to get that content back out in front of a whole new audience. Think about who your audience is. Again, where are they spending their time? So if they're spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, SlideShare might be a great idea for you. If they are spending a lot of time watching YouTube videos or spending their time on live streaming, well, then Blab might be it. So you really do have to identify what medium is going to work best for your business. And then
that's true.
I'm all about baby steps.
Oh, that's a great idea. And doing those graphic quotes, that's a perfect idea. It takes 2 minutes to make one, and you're done. And anybody here who wants to see some of those in action, go to Rebecca's Twitter page. I mean, they're all over there. Twitter.com/Rebecca Red East. They're all over there. They're the best.
Yeah. The sky really is the limit, isn't it? You are only limited by your imagination when it comes to repurposing. And it's just finding your own groove, finding what works best for you, testing,
yes.
Figuring out what your audience is responsive to, and then how well are those doing on Twitter. And the one last piece of advice I think we'll give on that repurposing is don't be afraid to get it out there multiple times, because just like with your blog post, that's the other, I guess, misconception I see is, oh, well, I tweeted it out once, so we're done. But yeah, remember, people are online at every hour, every minute of the day, and your audience likewise is spending time on Twitter at different times. So make sure you get it in front of that unique audience.
Right.
Anything else on that you can think of, Diana?
I think that's great. Repurposing all the way. Big fan of that.
Well, and we touched on inserting yourself into maybe hot topics with hashtags.
Right.
But let's talk a little bit more about how you can use those hot topics to create thought leadership and discover great content within those maybe trending topics. Where would be the first place you would go if you were looking for a trending or hot topic?
I would just look on the side of the Twitter page, right? The trending topics are right there. But there are tons of tools, little apps that you can use to discover trending topics on all of the social networks, because I know this is huge on Instagram as well. So just do your research. That's the main thing about hashtags, because there's so many of them that people don't search anyway. So you want to stick with the popular ones, but yet still at the same time be very specific. So I would the whole key, I think, with seeing success from hashtags is doing the homework.
Well, and I love this Twitter handle, Little Fella said Google. And absolutely, Google and Google Plus are great for just trending content, seeing what people are talking about. How do you think Catterday took off?
Exactly.
Things like that don't just happen. It's because, we're all looking to join a conversation. And if you pay attention to what's going on right now, what are people talking about right this second, if it's relevant to you, and I think that's an important piece to remember, is it appropriate for your business for you to jump into that conversation? Whole other conversation, obviously, but I think, getting yourself into those hot topics by just using some tools to look for that information. There's some great tools like Tagboard is one of my favorites, where you can see all different hashtags and all the conversations that are happening around that particular topic. And, I still always fall right back on your first piece of advice, Diana, which is just go to Twitter Native, the app.
It's right there.
It's all right there.
It's right there.
You need.
Oh, and I saw that Ross Quintana just put in the chat here about BuzzSumo. I know that's one of your favorites. Maybe you should talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, BuzzSumo, definitely. It's a multifaceted tool, but definitely helps with the hashtags to see whose content is getting shared the most around any topic, any niche, anything you can think of that you'd want to type into that search. So it does start to help you discover great content through people that are sharing great content. So who are those people that have been creating maybe content for years and years and years and are an authority around that specific topic? BuzzSumo would definitely help you start to identify who those people are, so that you could add them to your Twitter lists, so that you could start to share their content, so you could start to interact with them. But yeah, that's a tool I know, as a team, we definitely use on a consistent basis to really start to understand who are the people that have already been sharing great content that we can start to, as I said, start to share their content, start to build those relationships. And what will start to happen that you'll find, and you can definitely fall into that rabbit hole of great content, is one person is sharing somebody else's content that I've never heard of them. I've never connected. And I know, Diana, we talk about that a lot. We are in very similar spaces, and yet we have very different connections and different contacts. So I think another great place to discover great content is through your mutual connections. So start to look at who's Diana following that could potentially be sharing great content that I've never connected with.
You introduced me to some new Star Wars fans just the other day on Twitter.
Yes, yeah. And so don't be afraid. I think that's another great point. Don't be afraid to be a relationship connector in those situations of saying, hey, I think you people need to know each other because you have very similar likes, or you're writing about all the same stuff, or you're sharing all the same content. So start to look at who people are following that could be very interesting to not only you, but to your audience as well. That's something I tend to do on my iPad in the evening once I sit down. I'll start to go through my notifications, and that's where I was joking with the rabbit hole. I could start to fall into, I'm not following this person. What kind of content did they share? Oh, I'm following this person. Yeah, so you definitely have to monitor your time, but it can be
I've gone down that rabbit hole a few times myself.
Really?
Yes.
Shocking.
Oh, and the thing is, if you don't have a lot of engagement now, and if you're thinking, how can I, get this conversation going? Just keep in mind that sometimes you have to reach out to people first. You have to just reach out and connect with people. Don't wait for them to engage with your content. I mean, sure, the goal is that would happen, but don't be shy. Just reach out and chat with people, and you'll just, once you get some engagement going, you will realize how valuable that information that comes from that engagement is. I mean, it allows you to make decisions about your content. It shows you what your audience likes, what they don't like. I mean, engagement is probably the most important social media metric that there is. Would you agree with me, Rebecca?
Absolutely. Well, and I unfortunately, we were trying to get Marcus on there, and looks like he had a bad connection. So just to reiterate real quick here, we've got 2 open seats. We would love to fill those. If you have something to add to the conversation, like Ross, hashtag follow the beard, I think was it.
And I saw Tommy TRC in here. If you're still in here, we'd love to chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see if we can get some people. There we go.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
How you guys doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, you sound good. You look good. So excellent.
I look good. Thank you.
We're one step in the right direction. Well, unfortunately, we lost Morkos because of, looks like he was having audio and visual problems.
Yeah, we could not see or hear him.
Yeah. So share with us your top tip or your feedback.
My top tip for what can content that will rock your
exactly on Twitter content. Yeah.
Anything honest, I think. I really think if you're like if you really believe in some sort of thing and you have a it doesn't even matter if it's like a crazy my only thing, it should be a positive message. I think that helps. But if you got something that you love and people can see that you honestly love that, you're gonna take off. I don't know how hashtags can hashtag that, but maybe that's what I'm asking you.
I think you're onto something there because authenticity is so important online, and people can see through. Oh, look, there's Ross. People can see through it, right? They will know if you're not being authentic and being honest, and make yourself vulnerable. It's okay. We all make mistakes, and I mean, we all have things that we overcome and that happen in front of everybody, and it's okay. But I think what you're saying about being real and being authentic is so important on social media.
I think it's a starting place. You know what I mean? It's somewhere to start from.
Well, my guess is that your Twitter handle, Mission and Personal, has something to do with that.
Yes, that's my whole thing. Well, it's like a new kind of life philosophy that I'm developing.
Yeah,
I'm a musician, but I come on here and I listen to just what people are talking about. Because, as far as the internet and stuff, it's funny. I'll play shows and I don't know nothing about hashtags. I don't know, and it seems like it makes a difference. So I'm trying to learn. I guess that's why I'm here.
Well, I think you make such an enormously important point that at the end of the day, we can share all we want. But if people don't feel that it's real, if people don't feel that it's authentic,
then they won't want anything to do with it.
No, exactly. Yeah, so incredibly important point. And what's your first name? Johnny,
sorry.
Johnny. No, that's okay. Just wanted to make it personal, Johnny.
Yeah, don't be.
So Ross, joining the conversation along with the beard.
What's up? And I heard I had the wrong thing on, so let's just cover that up.
Yeah, let's.
It's just a great right over there because I'm the Hulk.
Teasing, of course. We love Buffer. Love our friends at Buffer.
Yes.
So I'm just off screen. It's so perfect. Anyway, stoked to be in here with you guys. And of course, Twitter content. Yeah. Here's the funny thing with Twitter content, I think too, is that there's so much out there. Like people underuse when they're retweeting or stuff and where they can add their own insight. And I think that's important too, because you get the opportunity to say a little something unique and tailor it to your audience, even though it may be about your audience. Sometimes the titles aren't necessarily optimized, and that's okay. But I think that if you really want to share good content, you have to come up with a unique angle for that content. And sometimes it's like 7 tips for Pinterest. It's like, okay, so what? We could find that 100 times a day. But if you even niche it down, like people, you can use those little extra comments to down niche. Hashtag down niche, the content, right? So say it's about 7 tips for rocking Pinterest or something, but you could add, great ways to crush Pinterest for crafts or for healthcare or for whatever. So even though the article wasn't actually written about healthcare, the fact is it tunes your healthcare people into the fact that if they're using Pinterest, these Pinterest tips are going to be applicable to helping them rock at what they're doing. And it just tailors it to them a little more than just saying, hey, it's for everyone, it's generic. So sometimes if your audience, your audience and you have certain niches, bring it in. If you have a music audience, bring it in there. Find stuff that's relevant, but then make it even more relevant by adding those additional kind of framing on it.
Well, it's adding the context to the content is what you're talking about,
Exactly.
Ross. It's really giving your thoughts, and we talk a lot about that, Diana and I, on a daily basis, is how do you take something and share it in a way that says, oh my gosh, Ross is the smartest guy I have ever met, and I loved this content because... it's adding that context around it that makes people care about what you're sharing and why you're sharing it, instead of just pushing content out there with no thought behind it. So I love that point, because you're so good at that. You're so good at adding value, adding that context around what you're sharing, instead of just simply pushing that tweet button and expecting people to just naturally gravitate towards it.
I think you have to literally think about that, for your audience. I think you have to realize that there's so many choices. And if that's in your mind and your mindset every time you're either writing content, sharing content, or whatever, like the more you can get that narrowed down and not try and reach everybody. What? Jed Record? Love the gifts. I think that's going to really take your content, like, you know what I mean? It's like the spices you're going to sprinkle on your food. It's your content. It's like, what's your signature dish? All your content, even the generic stuff you share from other people, can have your signature and your stamp on it. So people should be utilizing that as much as possible to really bring their personality into it.
I agree.
Nice. Excellent. Two amazing tips that, especially when added together, are
they kind of work
powerful.
together. Yeah.
They do. It's as if you guys called each other up and
it's the
Wi-Fi
listen,
from our beard for like 3 months. All right, and then we'll hop on Blab 3 months from now. We won't shave, and then 3 months from now we'll hop on Blab and we'll put our points together.
Nice.
It'll be like the perfect storm.
There's a streaming connection going through the beards. I'm sorry, ladies. There's some information that's on a secure private beard network.
I don't know, but they get some pretty nice hair themselves, though.
It's true. Yeah, Diana's you can't see as much today, but she has a gorgeous head of hair.
Yeah, it looks very healthy. It looks shiny and healthy. And your hair also. Pretty good hair day on Blab right now.
Talk about a rabbit hole.
That's right.
Oh.
Pretty good hair day on
products. Tell us what hair products you use.
Well, now that you asked, I actually sell them.
And oil in my beard is light
Ross
lavender.
and Johnny, we just barely touched on tools that can help you discover great content. Do you guys, Ross, you might have brought up BuzzSumo, but anything else that you would highly recommend as an easy way to get out there and find great content?
Well,
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Well, sorry, you guys, have you looked at Hashtagify Me?
Yes.
Yeah, most definitely.
Did you guys talk about that?
Yeah.
I just think that's like it clues you in. It points you in the right direction, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To find relevant hashtags,
Yeah, that's the only thing I would say about it. That's the only thing I know, literally.
Yeah, here's a little thing that I would do. Two little tricks. One is Triber is actually interesting for this, because if you go through, a lot of times, people always write these posts, oh, how do I get inspired for my blog post, or how do I do this? A lot of times, if you filter your Triber and you have your feed of all your favorite people and favorite content, like literally, me, I'm a growth hacker. I like to do two things at once. And so what I would do is I'll go through my Triber feed as I'm curating some content. That's also, all those titles are running through my brain, and I'm starting to see the patterns, and I'm starting to see, it's Jeremiah, it's my little guy. I'm starting to see the pattern of what people are actually talking about, what's hot, what are other people writing about, right? You don't have to start your filter from the ground up. In other words, if you have all these, let's say I have 25 bloggers, and of course I got a lot more than that in my Triber stream, but let's just say you get into Triber and you get a bunch of these bloggers who are on topic for you. That's a source of data that a lot of people overlook, in the fact that what are they writing about? Because each one of them probably is looking at what's relevant, because they're not going to put garbage on their blog. So instead of starting at the bottom and building your filter or relying on just a tool, you can go in and use that as a double thing, that I'm using it to curate some content from mine. I've already vetted the sources. And then number two, they've studied to know, and then I get an overview of what's everybody talking about. I can go through 100 posts right there and know what's really the top thought leaders are thinking about and talking about right now. And you don't need a tool for that. And boom, now if I want an idea like, okay, where could I position myself into that scope, or what topic is really relevant? Wow, Facebook is like, 35% of this. So, and they're talking about XYZ. So instantly I can go, okay, great. I could go actually take it a step further and either share out their content, or I could go out and search for more content. And I like to cluster it. So if you are going to go in and do all that and you decide, hey, you know what, whatever people are talking about right now, I'm going to go read some of those posts. I'm going to comment, and then I'm going to come back. And since I've already done the work in looking for my own content I'm going to share, why not bust out a title and write a piece of content that's fitting in the spot that nobody is really talking about, or what's the hot spot, and give a unique angle. All this helps you. So don't think that you're just looking for content to share on Twitter. If you're already doing that research, I want to make that research walk with me, and I want to get more out of it. And so then I'm going to reverse it and say, okay, great, I'm going to write a blog post about that since I already did the research for the day. Make that a just daily routine of finding what's hot, positioning yourself, writing a piece of content relevant to that, and now you're part of the conversation that's hot too. Instead of just sharing it, now there's my content. So
there you go. Yeah, that's such great advice. And we're huge fans of Triber, obviously. Triber being a blogger network. I don't even know how long ago I started there, but what an amazing way to make connections. So I think it's finding where are those people within your industry, within your network, where are they spending time, and how can you become a part of that community so that you're sharing each other's content, but you're also getting inspired by that great content too. And somebody mentioned Feedly, another great tool in your content curation on a daily basis. That is like a go-to for me as I'm reading and keeping up with different bloggers, or just anything, and news-wise, whatever it is that you're wanting to keep up to date on. Finding an easy way. That's what this blab, this whole conversation is all about. How do you simplify that job of sharing great content, of discovering great content? And it's just figuring out those best practices that you can integrate into your day every single day, and then making it a habit. Because that's certainly what you're talking about, Ross, is, it's got to become a habit where you're doing it every day, and ensuring that, you also have a plan of what you're going to do with that content.
It takes a lot of energy to get started. And that's the thing. That's why I try and batch stuff, because it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do nothing. And then you're like, oh, I need to write a post. How do I get inspired? Then you got to do all that. Or, hey, I want good content curation. And you do that. It's like, clump those things together, because you're already looking at that stuff. You can use multi-author blogs. Forget Triber. I mean, sorry, Dina. Even aside from something like the idea that I gave on Triber, go to a multi-author blog. Go to like a B2C or a Community or a Mashable or any of these ones where you have multi-author blogs. And same thing. You can literally scan, right? That's data that's collected that's actually deep and has meaning behind it, because that's what people are talking about. Crowdsource all that stuff. Just look at the front page of these things, and you're going to know these guys. You're not going to go to, Mashable or something, or TechCrunch or any of these kind of sites, whatever's relevant to your niche. You're not going to go there and think that they didn't do their research on what they're having on their front page. So why, shortcut everything? You know what I mean? It's highly leveraged. It's like, why sit there and meditate on it for an hour to come up with something? Like, forget about it. You can go to one of these things and go, blam, this is the top 6 things that these major players are talking about. There's my research. I'm going to get right in that space.
So let's talk a little bit about, because we're coming up on the top of the hour here, and we'll go a few minutes late since we got a late start. But let's talk a little bit about sharing that great content. Now that you've discovered that content, how much are you sharing, and how often are you sharing it? Because that's always a really hot topic.
Exactly.
How do you find balance, and how do you know if you're sharing too much? How do you know if you're not sharing enough? And how did you, Jody's here, how did you figure that out? Diana, why don't we start with you, and then we'll make our way over to Jody.
Sure. I think that is a question a lot of people ask. A lot of people have asked us that. How do you know how much to share, and how often should you be posting? And I think the answer to that, the very simplified answer, is post as much as you can where you can still be engaging, right? And I think that's where scheduling the content becomes key, because then you free up your time that you're on Twitter or whatever social network, you free up your time to actually engage. But you will know, you'll get a feel for it. There's not a cookie cutter answer to that question. Everybody's, feed is different. Everybody's audience is different. But I would definitely recommend posting as much as you can while still being able to be engaging, because that is such a critical part of social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you do. So
hi, Jody.
Let's let Jody jump in.
I agree. I mean, I think I've sort of said this before, I have my day sort of parceled out, where it's like writing, posting, scheduling, engaging is a huge part of my day. I wake up early, especially to do that. But, there are some times where I sort of draw a blank. So I definitely am looking for topics to talk about and what's the most relevant thing. So I'm kind of very scheduled. You are too, Rebecca, aren't you?
Yes.
It's the only way it works.
Yeah, it really, well, and Diana is too. And I think you're bringing up such a great point, which is how do you work it into what is already happening within your world? You're running a business. You've got a million things going on. And how do you ensure that you're consistent in your efforts, that you give yourself some time? And so you have found that giving yourself some time in the morning is what works.
Yes. Yeah, morning is absolutely what works for me. Lunchtime is 100%. And I'm also talking about what's going on in our day. I mean, to me, once you finally find your voice, I think it's a lot easier to engage live. Does that make sense? Yes. So everyone knows I drink coffee, right? And everyone kind of knows I'm super excited that it's 70 today, pretty much in my community, because it's been 90 for like 18 months. So, if you're comfortable in your voice, I think it's easy to have those posts and then be engaging.
Yeah. And that's where I see automation fills the gap. That's where I see it comes in, is it allows us to be consistent in getting that great content. So we're out there, we're finding that great content, we're scheduling it, and then we're able to free ourselves up so we can come in and have that conversation.
I think that is the key for being successful on Twitter without it taking you all day of just sitting there on Twitter all day. I mean, who has time for that, right? We all have lives.
Oh my God, wait a second.
What? Aren't we all like this?
But Rebecca, you said something to me yesterday. As you know, I am scheduled, but I am not as scheduled as I want to be, and I'm working on that. And you said to me yesterday, if it's not scheduled, it doesn't get done. And that is so true, how important it is to put everything on your schedule. Even if you're scheduling, I've got 15 minutes here to spend on Twitter and to respond to tweets. Well, put that 15 minutes on your schedule, right? Otherwise, something else is going to fill that space. And I know we're getting off topic here, but...
Or lunch.
Yeah, or lunch.
Or
what
lunch.
The heck? Yeah, exactly. Or coffee, right? Go fix coffee.
Or other beverages, whatever works in the middle of the day. Could be a craft beer, could be something else.
It's in my opinion, it's not realistic and it's not sustainable to believe that you're going to be on social media 24 hours a day. and get work done and be, interactive and responsive, unless of course you have a team that is what their sole focus is. But, for people that are small businesses, personal brands, you have to get your content into a schedule so that it is getting out there on your behalf, so you can do what you're talking about, Jody. Come in and talk about this amazing weather that we're having, because we're like, yes, no more 90s. Well, everybody else is probably crying about 30 degrees. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Rebecca, that is such an important point, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because the whole point of this is to learn how to be consistent and to have it be sustainable over time. And I know you and I have both evolved on Twitter, and we've had, years where we tweeted more than others, and we've evolved. But in order to stand that test of time, I think, first of all, a social media management app is so important, to streamline everything. I don't know how people who just do it completely manual all the time, I don't know how they survive. I mean, I would never be able to be consistent that way. And also, I think it's important to do exactly what you said and just get your systems in place, get your schedule in place, because you don't want to run like the gazelles for a month and then not tweet for 2 months because you're exhausted. You want to be able to make it in the the long road, right? Exactly, and have fun with it and not be stressed out over it.
Jody,
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and just to kind of cap off that point too, a lot of people get, there's kind of things that float around in the social media space. You know what I'm saying? And like automation kind of gets miscategorized a lot of times, I think. People go straight to what's spammy and what's this and what's not authentic. And in reality, there's elements of things that are really not that important for you to touch every day. And so it's like, automating your interaction, that's horrible. I wouldn't do that. Right. Scheduling content, yes. Automating some things that are just repetitive tasks, like if you're gonna do a shout out or a call to action or something, yes, I don't need to type it in every once a week or anything like that. You should be scheduling. The more you manage, the more you're going to be able to do. And then you also get away from the thick of things, so that not only can you make that 15 minutes really count, but then even if you've scheduled what you can where you can, you also can take that extra 5 minutes to look beyond that and say, what's another layer I can put on my content? How can I take this quality up? Can I research a new content source? Can I make a new connection that matters? Have I looked at the visual nature of my feed and what's my marketing mix, within that? Like, all that stuff has to happen within a small frame when you're doing it routinely every day. And so don't take and say, well, I'm going to spend 15 minutes on Twitter and that's it, and then just spend that time only engaging. Like, take 10 minutes of that engaged, take 5 of that and plan and take a fresh look at your feed and say, does this really represent me? Is this strategic to my goals? Is this where I want to be? What new layer could I add on top of this that would make it really dominate? I think that's important.
And I want to quote Post Planner. I want to quote Post Planner today on Instagram, if I may.
I thought you were showing off your phone.
Everything in advance, so in real time you can focus on engaging.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Exactly. Well, and that is, I think, a perfect complement to what Ross just said, which is when you can focus on the intention behind everything that you're sharing, all of a sudden you're strategic. All of a sudden there's purpose behind what you're doing every single day, instead of that run, fire of, oh my gosh, I haven't tweeted anything in 24 hours and I've just got to get something out there. We've all felt that at some point, that stress. Instead, you're looking ahead. You're looking to the future of, okay, how does this content support? How does it support my mission, my vision, my values? How does it support my company goals? So you're really looking at it from a strategic point of view, instead of it's an afterthought and maybe I'll just tweet something at some point. And I definitely think that's where there's a misunderstanding in what automation scheduling is really all about. It's not about, by any stretch of the word, automating the conversation. It's about taking a few things off of your plate so that you can actually engage in the conversation.
Right.
Exactly. That is absolutely true. And if anybody's on this blab and they're thinking, oh, I've done such a bad job with my tweets and now it's all ruined. I don't know what to do. No, just get right back on the horse again and start. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like dieting or exercise, right? Oh, shoot, I haven't exercised in 3 weeks. That doesn't mean never to do it again, right? It's okay. Just start up again. It's all right, and it will come together. Because I know we're putting a lot of focus here on consistency, which is absolutely important. But if you feel like you're kind of in a rut or you haven't really hit the nail on the head with that, it's okay. It is absolutely okay. Just pick it up and go with it.
And I think you grow as a Rebecca.
No, I was just going to ask you a quick question. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think you grow as a business owner and an entrepreneur, and things that you did before are different than you do in the middle and different than you're doing, a year from now. And I think that you need to take all that in, and that is your brand. So I think my husband and I were sitting out to dinner the other night, and he said, well, can you work tonight? Because he had work to do. And I'm like, well, what do you mean, can I work tonight? And he goes, well, I have work to do. Do you mind if I work? And I'm like, dude, I can work every night. I can work every morning, every afternoon. There's always something to be done. So like you were saying, Diana, is, it's not really wrong or bad. It's just get back on the wagon, and maybe a different way, and experimenting. I like to experiment different ways too.
Exactly.
Yeah, something I was going to throw out there too, to what you said, Rebecca, just a point back, is that when we were talking about strategy, a lot of people think about strategy and they only think about, and I know you push this a lot and you're very business focused, which is one of the things I love about you is that you come in and you say, hold on, before we get into tools, before we get into all that, what's your strategy? Why are you doing this? Do you know what you're supposed to, what your goals are and why you're trying to get this stuff done? And here's the key thing is that taking that even another step is like a lot of people don't even have that from the beginning. Then you have to kind of go back and say, hey, is there a point to everything you're doing? And I'll say this, everything that you build, strategy is left out most of the time in social, but build it in as a part of your routine, because it's not just even something you got to do in the beginning. You absolutely need to do it in the beginning. And if you haven't done it, you got to go back. But then by putting it in as a daily thing, a top of mind thing, you're going to always be churning over that and fine tuning your strategy and making sure you're there, because it's something that things can shift. Your business can shift, your focus can shift. And then before you know it, even if you had a strategy, that strategy is no longer in alignment with your current goals that you're trying to do. So I say that everything, if we want to be able to control our focus, then we have to have great routines, great methodologies, great systems, because it's those things that allow us to not think about those things and still have those things be an active part of our business. That